Hello and welcome to the third pool. Here we've got several familiar names up on the board, but let's get this one rolling. Up first we have Transporter Company 171 by Excerpt 7 up against Resurgance by Icemourn. The Transporter Company is a Sentinel fleet, which is going to be pretty heavily armed, but if I remember right, he didn't use a whole lot of the... I don't know. No, it definitely looks like it's using plenty of armor. I don't even know. I don't know what I'm thinking. But you can see a lot of plasma bolts, annihilators, some flurry missiles. Ought to put out a pretty good show. And then Icemourn's got a big old penis here, and some more plasma bolts, annihilators. Plenty of sentinels so far in this one. We've got these little melee rusher guys here, which I don't think are going to work out too well up against Excerpt 7 fleet, but let's see how it pans out. They've got very similar ship counts too, which I think is interesting. Ooh, Excerpt 7 is not using melee armor. That's painful. And yeah, it's I tell it like it is. If it looks like a dick and it acts like a dick, it's a dick. But we can see the melee rusher is giving a huge early advantage to Icemourn's fleet. Unfortunately, it looks like Excerpt 7 is not using melee armor or even the armor plates, which is giving Icemourn a tremendous upper hand. In this first round, you can see the point discrepancy between the two is pretty big. You can also see Icemourn using the waffling structure on the exterior of the ship, which allows it to help absorb and mitigate splash damage, because splash damage hits everything in the radius. So if you increase the radius, if you decrease the number of blocks in a given area, you decrease the amount of damage that you take from splash weaponry. This rusher seeming to have a hard time lining up a shot on this guy, but this round is all but over. And one of the melee rushers we saw immediately took out one of Excerpt 7's big ships. Those melee rushers are small and very inexpensive, so to lose a big chunk of your fleet to one of them is certainly less than ideal. That said, though, this missile ship seems like it wants to try and be a hero, but there ain't no heroes here. No heroes here. As round one's gonna go to Icemourn. Now we have round two. I'm afraid we might see more of the same. As you can see, the melee ships just taking big chunks out of Excerpt 7's larger gunships, which is significantly below ideal. The gunships are going to be packing a big portion of his damage output, and so to lose, even if you don't lose the whole ship, losing like an entire side of the ship is very troublesome. And meanwhile, because Icemourn is using the actual armor plates and instead of the core and auxiliary hull segments, his ships are able to take considerably more abuse too. And Really don't want to sit through another ship trying to be a hero. It's over, little guy. I think if you were to just be able to fire at these targets forever, or well, as unobstructed the entire time, I don't think this other guy could score enough points to win. And you can see Icemourn is using some normal blocks as well, but he's got his exterior layer as all the armor plates and some melee spikes on the front, which means his ships are still saving some weight and some point value by using the core segments in the center, but they're not really compromising the early game durability. But up next we have Terran supply fleet by Climhazzard. We've got these here super freighters, which has some plasma cannons, some missiles. Looks like a pretty solid design, should be rather durable. The putting a little armor piece in between each of the containers is different. I don't know how well that's going to work out, but it does seem interesting. It's actually 2 armor pieces, looks like. But let's see, what else we have? We've got a little missile drone. These things have proton swords and torpedoes, some missiles, a couple rockets, a little bit of everything. And looks like that's all the different ships he's using. Let's see how this pans out. I feel like those giant freighters are probably going to do quite a bit of damage. And as you can see, the plasma cannons kind of just drilling their way through targets. Plasma cannons are a really good, reliable damage source overall. They do a very good job of projecting fire. Really good mid-range weapons all across the board. Meanwhile, you can see the proton sword and torpedo ships doing a little bit of a dance, flirting with danger, as it were. They're protected by shields, so they can take a few hits from these sentinel cannons, but at the same time they kind of have to be very careful, because if those sentinel cannons do manage to punch through those shields, you can see the blast radius on the annihilators. It's big enough that it would take out like half of the internal components on the torpedo ships. That said, freighters in the way. Freighters distracting things, which is very ideal for Climhazzard, as Climhazzard takes round 1. And yeah, Climhazzard ships are indeed big ol' ships. And while they don't have a ton of firepower compared to some of the other things we've seen, the is that 7 Terran small plasmas are actually not bad DPS. There's it is an untankably large amount of damage from a ship that is able to absorb quite a few hits itself. I think these small plasmas are something like 120 DPS each. There's no shield in the game that can withstand it, and you can see even armor is getting torn through rather quickly. Overall, very well executed on the part of Climhazzard's fleet. This run is going better for Excerpt 7, but I don't think his fleet's going to be able to seal a win here. This is a bit of more ideal environment for this one ship, at least. where it's kind of just sitting back just outside the enemy's range. The Sentinel cannons actually have better range than most of the other weapons in the game, but that said, Climhazzard wins the match. So next up we have Excerpt 7 up against Finn. Finn modeling his ships after some sci-fi series. I can never remember the name. But we've got autocannons, mortars, a bunch of shields, big plasma. I think should hit pretty hard. This weird disc sort of shape with some generators in the back. This fairly heavily armed ship. The mortars are spaced out, which might actually come in pretty handy. Let's see, and then we've got this guy, who appears to be the centerpiece of the fleet. What's kind of interesting about this is that it's very heavily armed, but it's all in the back. And you can see the distance that he placed between his generators and his core. That will probably come in very handy for its survival. And he left a factory on, so I guess this is supposed to be a campaign fleet. We're seeing factories here in Excerpt 7's fleet as well, which, because resources are off, factories are just a waste of points. Every factory being 100 points, and if it can't build a ship, it's just 100 wasted points. But you can see the fleet from Excerpt 7 doing much better here. I think there's a bit of a more favorable environment for it. And Excerpt 7 takes round 1. Rather quickly, too. That was a very brief fight. The Starfleet seeming to struggle with these Sentinel block-shaped ships. I'm a big fan of Sentinel cannons. They are very solid weapons all around. I feel like they probably don't get enough love, but you can see they definitely put holes in things, and they're very inexpensive overall. But now we have Excerpt 7 up against Armor for 18, and here we see a very Armor for 18 looking ship. The container shield is very standard for Armor for. He's got the 2 plasmas. He's got his lasers for point defense. This is pretty much, if you see a submission from Armor for, you're probably going to see a ship like that. But these guys look kind of new, which they're mostly missiles, some defense cannons. I don't know if this asymmetry was intentional, but it's kind of driving me nuts. The plasma cannons on the sides versus the front and back. Yeah, I hope you get knocked out for that. But let's see, we've got the drone ship here, doing drone ship things. These things are super fragile, but that said though, the drone ship should be keeping back. So let's see how they do. The container shields on Armor for's big ships are more or less kind of miniature trappers. They kind of grab ships and pull them toward the center where he's got a bunch of lasers and where his plasma cannons can actually reach. And yeah, sometimes the good-looking ships just get demolished. Sad but true. But it does look like round 1 at least is going to go in favor of Armor for. it is. So, with how that went, though, I can't imagine the round 2 is going to go a whole lot different. I don't think Excerpt 7's fleet really has much of an answer for the line ships from our first fleet. They, ton of lasers to deal with incoming missiles. The 2 plasmas are actually a lot more dangerous than I think most people imagine. Especially when you consider that 2 or 3 ships firing at you at the same time is a bit unpleasant. And I feel like those lasers are probably more than a slight contribution to Armor 4's overall output. But you can see the line ships taking their time, but slowly but surely killing the ships from Excerpt 7. It's unfortunate. Excerpt 7's having a bit of a rough tournament this time. And Armor 4 takes the match. So next up we have Excerpt 7 up against Order by Husk. And Order, there's some interesting choices being made here. These guys are just little melee rammers, there's nothing extraordinary there. But of note, these ships, these ones, they have the 4 melee spikes, 1 on each arm. But these ones also have 4 melee spikes, but they're on the wrong side of the arm. These gray spikes here are melee. The rest of them are not. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but we'll see how this pans out. Husk is also using quite a bit of the Sentinel cannons and missiles, which I feel like the cannons are going to serve pretty well overall. And I'm a pretty big fan of the color scheme that Husk is going with too. The black and orange. Makes all the cannons kind of a grayish color too, which creates this neat little checkerboard pattern here. I'm liking that as well. And yeah, I'm a pretty big fan of the big spinners. They look like the kind of ship you don't want to run into in a dark alley. The rammer seems to be a bit confused though on the right side of the screen. It isn't ramming. Instead it's just going to get picked apart. And Husk takes round 1. And yeah, there are quite a few Sentinels in this pool. I think there's only the 1 Terran. I think everybody else is Sentinel in this pool, actually. Let's see. We've got 3 Terran fleets and 3 Sentinel. Go me. But yeah, a lot of Sentinels in this fleet. Sentinels used to be by far the most popular And then we started banning nukes and melee troll ships. And then they got a lot less popular. But as you can see, it looks like Husk is cleaning up this last round. A tough run for Exterp 7. This fleet seemed pretty neat, but the lack of armor and whatnot is certainly becoming a bit of a factor. But now we have Climhazzard up against Icemourn. We saw Icemourn's melee rammers actually do a rather good job cleaning up some of the bigger ships from Exterp 7's fleet, but they seem to be less enthusiastic about engaging Climhazzards. Not really sure why, but they are certainly a bit more timid. And these ships are trying to dig in to the freighters, which I think is exactly what Climhazzard wants, but you can see points being put on the board very slowly on both sides. However, if left unattended, this penis over here is going to molest this freighter. Which seems to be happening, and I don't know that any ships are even moving in such a way that it would allow them to provide relief. Well, I think all of the melee, well, not all, but most of the melee rammers are dead for Icemourn's fleet. But they were really kind of a small investment, kind of a, but have about 1,000 points left and nothing really I want to add. So melee rammers everywhere. Right. Yeah, the freighters don't look that expensive. The torpedo guys, however, are very heavily armed. It looks like the torpedo ships are also spewing mines, which do a very good job of dissuading things from getting too close. And I hadn't considered that, Floof. I think I will, though. This certainly is some adult content. And Climhazzard takes turn 1. There's a pretty solid slugging match between these two fleets. And you can see the Sentinels doing that trick where they meld, become a single ship. Yeah, Sentinels have some weird bugs. You just kind of have to accept it if you really want to play with the Sentinels. And here you can see Climhazzard about halfway through. Pretty solid point lead. The freighters are falling apart, but I think the mid-sized ships are still going to be fast enough to evade the bulk of the damage out of Icemourn's fleet and continue to score plenty of points. Especially if they can get their hands on that big one. Climhazzard making an excellent showing in this round. The point gap only continuing to grow. Though that said, the ships from Icemourn are surviving a very long time. I'm not sure if that's just the durability of Icemourn's fleet or the damage output of Climhazzard's, but somewhere in there, the ships are lasting an extraordinarily long time. We'll see how Icemourn fares against some of the other submissions. It should give us a better idea. And Climhazzard takes the match. So up next we have Icemourn up against Finn. I feel like this one's probably going to go in favor of Icemourn. Finn's fleet looks fantastic, but we saw it was struggling with the fleet from Excerpt 7, which in turn was struggling with Icemourn's fleet. And the melee ship taking out a considerable number of power generators and disconnecting the ass of the ship from the rest. And Icemourn takes round 1. I'd be surprised if round 2 went a whole lot different. Icemourn's fleet just has plenty of durability, plenty of damage output, a lot of splash weapons, which make short work of exposed interiors. And Icemourn takes the match. So up next we have Armor for 18 against Icemourn. This I feel like is going to be a bit of a better fight. Armor for ships are rather durable and packing decent damage output, but that said, they are Terran ships, and Terran ships are vulnerable to melee spikes. Getting a bit of time dilation here. I don't know, it may just be coincidence. The Icemourn's Phallus doesn't seem to be doing very much thrusting. It's mostly just kind of spitting here and there, but not necessarily in the direction you would think. And you can see by the score, the fight between these two is very even so far. Ship counts are leaning in Armor First favor, but it was mostly just the little melee rushers, which aren't that important. I think they're only really there for the odd time where they actually do manage to take out a big chunk of ship. But I suspect in a lot of matches they're probably not going to do much of anything. Only 1 minute on the clock, and the lead is small, but still appears to be steadily growing in Armor First favor. His ship showing the traditional armor for brawling capability, holding up very well to sustain fire. And it looks like Armor's going to be taking round 1. A pretty close round, but it does definitely seem to be going in favor of Armor. These ships are generally very good at brawling, and this fleet appears to be no exception. Yeah, Floof. I don't want to say you're going to lose because I haven't really paid a whole lot of attention to the fleets in that pool, but have you noticed what names haven't appeared yet? Although Icemourn off to a much stronger start this round than the last. I think he might have a fairly good chance of taking this one and running away with it. That's it though. Props for choosing not one of the big three. The score actually seems to be moving more in favor of Icemourn this time too. I think a lot of that has to do with these ships from Armor not participating. Seems to be some tractor beaming of parts not working out either. These guys are just sitting here doing this dance. And yeah, round 2 in favor of Icemourn. So these two are going to a 3-round match. Both fleets perfectly content to just sit there and brawl with each other. And we've got some ships stuck together again. That's never gone awry in the past. It looks like Icemourn's off to a rather good start in this round as well. About an 800 point lead. Which, I don't know that either of these fleets has managed to score even the majority of points. Brawler on brawler combat is pretty straightforward. There's not too much that should be all that variable, although placement of ships and what they choose to engage will always have a bit of an effect on the fight, which is why even though we saw Armorford win the first round, Icemourn won the second, and now it appears Icemourn's in a very good position to win the third as well. Though a big portion of Icemourn's fleet is not participating in the fight at all, which might just give Armorford everything he needs to take the win. The point gap getting very narrow now. Only, and Armorford appears to be in the lead with less than 30 seconds on the clock. Turning it around in the last second. And not by much either. I think Icemourn's only 50-something points behind. Or, well, about 100 now. Conditions can change pretty quickly. And no, it's not helping that his ships are stuck together. The Sentinels are the only ones that really have that problem, too. But Armorford 18 wins. So up next we have Icemourn up against Husk. And right off, Husk's melee guy seems to have decided that hugging the spinner was an appropriate plan. Another really close brawling match between these two. Both fleets are relying very heavily on the Sentinel cannons, but Husk's fleet is made of spinners while Icemourn is using the mesh structure and has more ships overall. But I do think Husk has a bit of an advantage because the ships rotate. They kind of spread out the damage across all of their armor a bit more efficiently. And as a result, it should take a little longer to actually kill Husk ships than Icemourn's. And that will be a pretty tremendous advantage overall in the brawl. As you can see, the point differential is slowly creeping up. And with a very, very commanding lead at this point, it looks like round 1 is going to go in favor of Husk. Take nothing short of something very unusual to turn this one around, I think. And Husk takes round 1. Moving in round 2, I imagine round 2 will probably go very similar. Again, brawlers are not too terribly variable. The RNG will still have some effect, mainly because of where it decides to place ships. But given the point difference between the two, I'd be very surprised if Husk didn't manage to take this one as well. Overall, the ships seem to be holding up very well to the incoming fire. You can kind of see everything just getting into a pile and shooting each other. Well, that said, Icemourn does have a pretty decent lead this time around. I think a lot of that is owed to the fact that Icemourn's ships are kind of ganging up on Husks one at a time, which does make a pretty profound difference in the amount of damage that a ship takes. And of course, as you kill ships, then your remaining fleet is able to better focus fire, which helps you kill more ships more quickly. Although, despite that early lead, Husk has turned around and taken a very commanding advantage here. I think a lot of it is that Icemourn ships kind of spread out, and you can see they were distributing their fire a bit more and giving Husk's fleet all of the advantage they needed. But it looks like Husk is going to be taking round 2 as well, as his point lead continues to grow. And there it is. Husk wins the match. So next up we have Climhazzard up against Finn. Climhazzard's been doing rather well this tournament. His medium-sized torpedo ships have been certainly earning their keep, and the super freighters have been doing a very good job of keeping the enemy busy for an extended period of time. I think that's going to come in pretty handy in this engagement. And you can see the point differential really starting to stack up. Climhazzard off to a very strong round 1, to the point where I would expect round 2 to be going basically the same. And Climhazzard takes the match. Rather quick sweeping victory on that one. But we're up against Armorfur now. Climhazzard was mentioning in chat that he was a bit nervous about how his fleet would fare because of all of the lasers that Armorfur's using for defense, which will help negate the torpedo damage quite a bit. But it also appears that Climhazzard's ships have decided to plant themselves, or at least some of the ships decided to plant themselves on Armorfur's container shield. Did not go well for the ships that did so, but I think only one of them died and the other ones managed to escape. So now it's more or less just a race against the clock. Can the medium ships kill Armorfur's line before the super freighters are destroyed? And for the super freighter on top, I'm pretty sure the answer is no. However, it does seem to be going a lot better for the super freighter on bottom. It has more medium ships defending it, and Armorfur ships are attacking from a bunch of different angles, which isn't going to go as well for Armorfur ships. And there's a big cluster of Climhazzard's mediums over on the left side. Armorfur ship not surrendering though, fighting until the bitter end. It's a very close match with only a minute on the clock, so it could be very much anyone's game. And you can see the amount of time it takes for the ships from Armorfur to be actually destroyed. They're very heavily armored. Those 4 medium ships have been working at this for a while. And a narrow turnaround on Climhazzard's part. Let's see if he can hold it for the next 35 seconds. It appears he might be able to though. The ship that the mediums on the left side of the screen are firing at now hasn't taken a ton of damage yet, or so it would seem. It's allowing Climhazzard to score a bunch of extra points. Meanwhile, one of the Super Freighters is still alive, still kicking in the middle of Armifer's fleet. And moving it around too, you can see Armifer off to another very strong early lead. But I believe he kind of had something similar to the previous match, or the previous round. And Climhazzard was able to turn around. A big part of it is that Climhazzard's medium ships are getting stuck on Armifer's line ships. And when that happens, the medium ships really don't stand much of a chance. But now that Armifer's line ships are just fighting the freighters, that'll give the mediums plenty of time to do their damage. And the lasers seem to be too busy firing at the freighters and whatnot to actually stop all the torpedoes. Armifer taking a huge lead this time, though. I don't know that Climhazzard's going to be able to make up the difference. I suspect this round is going to go in favor of Armifer, and we're going to see this one go to a round 3. The medium ships for Climhazzard deciding to chase a distractor and getting surrounded and pinched by Armifer's heavier line ships did not do them a whole lot of favors. I do like this trail of mines, though. You can kind of see where the ship traveled. Quite a bit of drone spam coming out of those little ships from Armifer too. I don't know if that's affecting the AI for Climhazzard's fleet at all, but I could certainly see it being something of a problem. Medium ships again getting themselves caught by the line ships. Not necessarily a great start, although they don't appear to have died nearly as en masse. Which, that part is considerably better. This one's staying much closer on points, with a minute left and only about a 60-point difference between the two. One AI flood is all it's going to take for either side to turn this one over real quick. And you can see the ships off on the toward the top left. Armor is very close to losing a ship. And actually, Climhazzard just put about 1,300 points on the board, which 45 seconds left. That might be all it's going to take. With one of the Super Praetors also still alive too, you can see regenerating. Not terribly quickly, but that's largely just a byproduct of its size. Or actually, both Raiders survived. Nice. And Climhazzard wins the match. So next we have Climhazzard up against Husk. All brawl all the time. Yeah, one of the nail biter kinds of matches. Imagine Husk will be a bit harder though. As long as his ships keep spinning, breaking through all their armor is going to be very difficult. Although that said, Husk has fewer ships than most, and they're getting distracted easily. And with a very big point lead in favor of Climhazzard, we might just see him take this one pretty handily. Yeah, with a minute left and the point gap continuing to grow, it does look like Climhazzard is going to be taking round one at the very least. Husk ships are busy trying to kill the freighters and not having such a great time of it. I imagine it's kind of a trick question, Floof. See, this is a supply fleet, but what it supplies is the carcasses of the dead enemies. Well, no, salvage implies material goods, like the wrecks of the ships. I'm talking about the actual bodies. It supplies the homeworld with food by destroying the enemy. But, pretty solid win for the first round from Climhazzard's fleet. Wondering if they can do that again in the second. Yeah, something like that. Simple farmers. Yeah, basically. Just, oh, we're but a helpless supply fleet. Don't attack us. And yeah, Climhazzard off to another very good start in this round. It's looking like he's gonna take the match pretty comfortably. And there you have it. Climhazzard takes round 2 and the match. So let's see this scoreboard again real quick. One of these days. So that's 5 wins for Climhazzard, so Climhazzard is moving on to the champion pool. But now we just need to see who will be joining him. Yeah, Armor for 18 off to a very strong start. Finn is having a bit of a rough go this tournament as well. His ships seem to be designed to follow the Star Trek aesthetic, but overall it seems to be costing in performance by a bit. And armor for takes round 1. And Arthur takes the match. So next up we have Finn up against Husk. Husk has been doing pretty well and Finn has been struggling. Wouldn't be surprised if Husk managed to take this one. And you can see the bulk of Finn's fleet having a bit of a hard time dealing with the rushers. Little melee ships can be something of a problem. And the Enterprise shaped ships are having a very difficult time with the placement of their core. Seems to be sort of right at the base of the thin neck. Yeah, I suppose that's one way to look at it. Relative to a usual Starfleet ship, these things are rather durable. And let's see, where is the core? Yeah, it's kind of just a bit above the base of the neck. Are there generators or anything around here? They seem to get picked apart pretty quick. Yeah, it's just a matter of depth. And the Sentinel Annihilator is doing what Annihilators do. I think most of these ships sitting in missile range rather than gun range is slightly suboptimal though. There they go. And Husk takes the match. So last up we have Armor Fur against Husk. So the winner of this will be advancing to the champion pool. And as you can see by the scoreboard, it was very close for a very long time, but Husk has pulled ahead by about 1,000 points now. If you can hold on to this for the next minute, then that's certainly advantageous. I mean, the AI never really gets nervous, so it's not like being 1-0 in a best of 3 makes the AI any more or less capable than it would be before. But I'm sure it would be a relief to Husk if he was at least up 1 win. And he is scoring considerably more points than Armifer, so it's looking rather promising for him. And Husk was with us here in chat, but it appears that he is disconnected. He doesn't love us like he used to. Which, to be fair, sleep is for the weak. Although by that metric, I'm very feeble. I like my sleep. And Husk takes round 1. Off to a pretty solid start. The score was very even for a long time, but Husk's ships kind of ran away with it at some point. Wondering whether or not they'll be able to do that again. And the champion pool should be done by then, but if you have to work in 6 hours, I would highly recommend getting sleep so that you can go to work. This stuff will be on YouTube. And you already know the only pool you have to watch is the champion pool. So, you know, there's that at least. Oh man, if 2,000 people entered, things would be done differently. It would be a single elimination tourney, and I don't even know if I'd stream it. Might stream it, but it would certainly not be one sitting. But Husk off to a very strong lead here too. You can see he's got about a 1,800 point lead, which is a pretty comfortable lead in these fights. Armifer's fleet seems to be high on durability, but a little low on damage. And a lot of that, I imagine, is by extension of losing the asteroid thrusters. He has to spend a lot more on his mobility than he would otherwise. The 4th Subpool's fleets. Shouldn't be too far from that. This is the last match of the 3rd Subpool, and then I'll be getting the 4th one going as quickly as possible. And I think this one is all but over. That is quite the score difference now, with Husk having almost twice as many points as Armifer. Yeah, I could see that. The Twitch mobile app is pretty bad. I don't think it's really the environment Twitch was designed for, and I don't know how much money they've actually spent on it. I think most of their money goes into data storage for the for video archiving. But there we go. So we're going to have Husk and Climhazzard in the champion pool. Thank you for watching, and I hope you continue to stick with us.